It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity. It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity. It's all about humanity. About It's all about humanity. About It's all about humanity. It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity.
Good evening, model citizens. Welcome to Humanity Junction. My name is Heath, and tonight is Modeling Monday. Tonight, our guest is Mark Juett, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Pulse of DCC, which is his, he writes an article in a journal of that title, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then time pending, we may get to see a little bit of his layout as well, so stick with us, and it should be a fun evening. Let's check in, see who's joining us tonight. Looks like we got Adam Cruz joining us, and I believe Adam called this Monday Mayhem. Not quite the name of the show that I hope for tonight, but we'll see how it goes. Andrew Estep is here. We have Anthony Dodge, the Model Train Insider. Awesome America, Model Railroading, thank you for becoming a member of the channel. I really appreciate that. Colin Wykes is in the house. We've got Container Man 68 finally showing up early, as he says. Tim from CP368 Productions is here. Dad Cooks joining us as well. Dragon Lover 68 is here. Dwight Curley. Dwight, you changed your name again. What happened to Curly Railroad? Or what was it? Curly... I forget what the name was, but it was different. Manny Fernandez in the house. Norm Miller joining us as well. John from Schuylkill River Valley is here. Thomas Splitrock 323. Steve Childers in the house, as well as Steve 87 PSAT. And ending up the list, but not last, is Z Fantasy Trains. And we've had a couple people drop in. Let's see, Bernard C. Coming in as well. And if I missed anybody, I apologize. Couple quick announcements. As you know, the last couple weeks and even tonight is interviews with different people that are doing clinics for the NMRA National Convention. I just learned that at the NMRA convention, there's going to be a breakout room for YouTube model railroaders. So if you want to join the convention and run into some of the regulars that you see here on YouTube, they are going to have a separate room for all of us to hang out in as well. I just saw Vinny from BNSF 6951 joining us. We have Almar coming in as well. Dwight says, I didn't change it. YouTube keeps removing things. Yeah, Every time I try and change my name, something odd happens as well. Let's bring up two of our regulars that we have. We've got Mr. Steve Childers and we have Z Fantasy Trains joining us.
Hi.
Hello.
Steve's given us the over-the-shoulder hand signal tonight. I think.
My fingers into cock at the moment.
Gotcha. Well, I hope you're all doing well. I want to show real quick. I've got some new little train cars down here. One is that's not a good view to show them. Let's just do it like this. We've seen the Edgar Allan Poe one. We've seen the Congratulations America's one. The World's Strongest Man 2021 just ended. So we've got a box car with a gentleman lifting some heavy weights. And I've got an N-scale Doodlebug in the back there, a little Pennsylvania Railroad. Haven't fired it up yet, but it's DC, so... Oh, I hid myself, apparently. Probably shouldn't have done that. It's all good. So the other thing I want to do just before we bring up our guests tonight is I do want to thank everybody, the people that are supporting this channel, both the individual supporters as well as all of the channel sponsors.
There's no sound.
Yeah, Z, you won't hear the sound in the background because it's the way Melon does it. I hope everyone heard the sound. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't.
No, I have it on the.
Can you hear me, Z?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay.
The
Well,
YouTube
we'll see.
side may have heard it, but
Yeah,
since we have
hopefully YouTube heard it, but you never know around here. But I don't want to waste any more time. Our guest tonight does have a lot of stuff going on, so I want to bring him up early. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mark Juett. Mark's joining us from the middle of the U.S. of A. And Mark, the title of this was The Pulse of DCC. So I thought that might be a good place to start, but I know you wear a lot of hats. So why don't we start with the DCC hat, and then we'll see where things go from there. But welcome to the show.
Okay, thanks, Heath. Thanks for inviting me. I started writing the Pulse of DCC column back in 2014. My wife and I were actually on vacation in Florida with some friends, and I was catching up on my reading, and it was an ad in the NMRA magazine. Stephen Priest was the editor at that time. And I had met Stephen, although he lives in the area, I'd met Stephen a couple of times. He has since become a very good friend of mine. And I contacted him and I said, tell me more about this, and I would be interested. I was in the process of making a lot of changes in my professional life. What I was doing is, you and I had talked the other day, I had worked in the corporate world for 25 years. Then I started my own business doing fire and water mitigation and restoration, and was phasing out of that and was looking to shift back and do things a little bit easier, and planning to have a little bit more time for model railroading, including writing the column. So I have continually wrote that column since May of 2014, missing only a couple of times here and there.
So you weren't like an electrical engineer or a computer science programmer or anything, but somehow you ended up as like the foremost authority on DCC. How did that kind of happen?
Well, actually, I have 2 engineering degrees.
Oh, okay.
One is in electronics, and one is actually in agricultural engineering. And most people are going to ask, what in the world is agricultural engineering? And it's a discipline that deals with food and farm processing. Actually, one of my friends who is now in the Kansas City area uh, that has designed modeling concepts, Mike Brusky, is also an ag engineer, but he was in food processing. Ag engineering is parallel to mechanical engineering, except for about 1 year of study. And we specialize in ag stuff after that. So I've only practiced as an engineer for a couple of years. I've been in product management, marketing, new business development, supply chain management. So, yeah, I know a bit about electronics. I'm not the foremost expert on electronics, never claimed to be, but if I don't have the answer, I'll find one that works.
And in addition to writing the Pulse of DCC column, you're also the and I always forget what it's called, the work group, the DCC working group for the NMRA.
Yes,
and how long have you been in that as well?
About 3 years doing that. Actually, I joined them. Well, once again, Stephen Priest got involved and volunteered me for something. And we ran into one another in a joint regional convention in, I believe that was in Ames, Iowa that year. And he volunteered me to test decoders.
My alma mater.
So I joined the group in decoder testing, and Ken West does most of our decoder testing these days. But I joined him in doing some of the testing, verifying that the CVs were assigned properly, did what they were supposed to. And Dee Voss was manager of the Standards and Conformance Department back then. And the next thing I know, I'm in charge of it. So,
and just to be clear, you're not on the manufacturing side of DCC. You're on the compliance side of DCC. So, like, if I came to you and said, "What's the best DCC system, and what should I get?" That's not where your expertise lies.
Well, I have an opinion.
Although we could ask you, you have your opinion.
Just a little bit of history about command control and digital command control. Back in the before this earliest recollection of it was Alan McClellan had the GE ASTRAC system in his railroad, which was one of the first, and it allowed you to take a throttle and independently control locomotives. That was great. Then in the late 70s, a fellow by the name of Keith Gutierrez, who founded CVP Products, EZ-DCC, had a series of articles in Model Railroad magazine to build the CTC-16, which I did back in that time period. Then there were other companies that built on the back of what Keith had done, such as Man-Made Products and Larry Keeler here in the Kansas City area. And we had Dynatrol and Keller and a lot of other manufacturers. But the problems were many of these systems did not interchange with one another. You bought a system, you were dedicated to that system. Well, the group started studying that. The NMRA group started studying it, and they came up with a couple of ideas. And Bern Lens, the Lens DCC company, Bern actually donated on a non-exclusive basis the licensing right to the NMRA for the system. And the group looked at what he had, his approach, the way he did it, the expandability of it, and they found that it was the best approach that anybody had taken thus far. So DCC wasn't created by the NMRA. It was actually created by Lens, adopted by the NMRA, and then created as the kind of the standard. And how did it become the standard, I guess? Because
you look at some scales like O scale, and they don't really comply to any one standard. They've got a bunch of different ones, but yet somehow we got HO scale and N scale to kind of comply to this DCC standard.
Well, even within O scale, when we're talking about track, wheels, and couplers, there are multiple standards in O scale. You have the 3-rail and then the 2-rail.
Yeah.
So those are different, but they're two separate standards within 1:48 ratio.
Well, then you have O gauge and O scale and semi scale and high rail and
Well, yeah, you have deep flanges and you have proto and you have everything in between. But as far as digital command control goes, this was adopted and this was put forth as an NMRA standard. And many manufacturers came on board. There are, within the DCC working group, we have a group of talented electronic geniuses that are much more knowledgeable than I that are involved in the standards. But we also have manufacturers which are also extremely bright and intelligent about this. And then working together as a group between the manufacturers and the volunteers, we have put together standards that people can follow, and you can have a decoder from company A, which will work on the command station for company B. So basically, and I just got a question the other day about an older system that hasn't been around in a while. And the guy asked me, well, will my Hornby 01 work? And I said, yes, it should still work, just like it always did. And so what this does, and let's get back to the purpose of NMRA standards, whether it's wheels, couplers, and track or DCC, it's for interchange. Is so I can go out, and I just happen to be doing a review on this Atlas covered hopper, this Thrall 4750 hopper. And if I buy that and it has a conformance warrant, I'm assured that if my track is to standard and engage, that this car will work on my track and through my track switches or turnouts. Likewise, if I have another hopper or boxcar or anything else, and it conforms and its wheels and couplers conform, then I'll know that that car can run with this car and they'll all work together. And likewise for digital command control, I can buy any of the major or minor command stations and throttles, and then I can buy a decoder from any of the manufacturers, and I know it'll work. I can pick up.
So the DCC from, let's just say, Digitrax is exactly the same as the DCC from NCE and exactly the same as the DCC from ESU? Or are there, like, is there kind of, I'm leading the witness a little bit on this because I kind of know the answer, but it does seem like there's this this central body that's the same, but yet not all the manufacturers aren't 100% compliant in certain areas.
Okay, you bring up a really good point, Heath. There's a core central area that has to be the same for things to work. Then outside of that, I have let's take your example between Digitrax and NCE. Digitrax has a way to connect locomotives in multiple unit consists, and NCE has a different way to do it.
Yes.
Now, you can be a fan of one or the other, but the central part all works the same. One of my favorite comparisons is between two of the really good decoders on the market, which is Soundtrax and ESU. ESU has one method of doing things which they call drive hold, and that's where you key some stuff into your throttle and you rev up the engine before the train actually starts to move, much like in the real world where you got heavy tonnage. Soundtracks, on the other hand, has digital dynamic exhaust, which they monitor the load on the motor and they change the sound of the prime mover according to that load. But yet, on my model railroad right here, I have Soundtracks decoders and I have ESU decoders, and they both work. They just work a little differently. Now, some people will say, well, it should all be exactly the same because my function mapping and the way this works and the way that works and all of it should be exactly the same. Well,
F12 should always be F12. It should always be the same function. I shouldn't have to think what decoder is in that to know what function. Yeah.
Well, and to a degree, you can remap function keys to take care of that. But if we make an edict that every one of them has to be exactly the same, you will thwart innovation and new ideas, and nothing new will ever come to the market. So
Bernard C is saying, so under the NMRA rules, they have to be close. And I guess my question is it a clear line? Or, so you're talking about innovation, right? So like it used to be there were 8 functions, now there's 28 functions, and how far does the standard regulate, and at what point can the manufacturers kind of add on from there?
If you'll look up on the NMRA website under the standards page, and particularly the standard for the configuration variables, which is the standard S-9.2.2, it will tell you which one of the CVs are required and which ones are recommended and which ones are optional, and which one, there are some that are reserved that the NMRA wants to keep cleared so that they could be declared for something later. And then there are others that are assigned to the manufacturers, which manufacturer A, B, C, or D can do within those whatever they like to have the innovation. Where the standard really is inspected and looked at very closely is the part of it that is going to affect your performance and enjoyment of your trains. When we test decoders, we send signals that are on the edges of what's tolerable.
Right.
We also have noise injecting boosters and glitch injecting boosters, which will mess up the signal. And those decoders have to survive that, and they must respond appropriately when the signal is on the hairy edge of being bad. And
you talk about items being compliant, and until I talked to you, like I knew there was a DCC standard, but I didn't realize that manufacturers could actually apply to be compliant. Can you kind of explain that compliance process and what that is?
Well, it's much the same whether it's DCC or for a car or a locomotive. Manufacturers, and we get requests quite often, particularly for new people coming into the industry, new small manufacturers, and they will ask us what is required to get a manufacturer's ID. Now, when you put a decoder on JMRI Decoder Pro and read that decoder, it will look at CV number 8 and tell you who the manufacturer is. It will look in CV7 and it'll tell you which model decoder it is. So you as the user can just let JMRI do that for you. So
But is that set by the NMRA, or did the JMRI people just sort of say, whether you're compliant or not, we're going to put you into Decoder Pro? Because David was asking if the standards are voluntary on the part of the manufacturers, aren't they?
Yes, the standards are voluntary, but you're well advised as a manufacturer to be compliant. because if you have a product that doesn't comply and it gives people problems, word will get around. So and so's decoder doesn't work very well. When I take it to the club layout and we have a bus run that's 5,000 feet long and it gets to the other end, the decoder doesn't respond appropriately. So these are not mandatory. These are optional, not required. The manufacturers, the good manufacturers, want to meet the standards. So we will issue a manufacturer's ID to a manufacturer once they've demonstrated that they can build a product that meets the standard, that they're capable of doing that. And in order to do that, they send us 4 samples to 2 of our testers, and one of them checks application of how the CVs are used, and then the other tester puts his electronic gear on it, which is computer driven, and they send the signals, on the edge, and they make sure that the decoder still responds as it's supposed to. And actually, well, that's one of the great things that the NMRA does. And, the guys that are doing the test, Ken West doing the most of it, is he will send the results to the manufacturer. He will interpret the results to the manufacturer and often has some advice about, well, if you would change this and this timing a little bit, I think it will bring it into compliance. And that's all free to the manufacturer. We don't charge for testing decoders or command stations or any other equipment. The advice that we give is pretty solid advice from guys like Ken and Carl Coble and Brian Bart and guys like that have done it in the past. And it helps them get a product that performs much better. And in the end, the end users, the person that benefits, the person that buys the product and goes to the store and says, oh, this has got the NMRA conformance logo on it, or it's listed on the website as being a conforming product. And by the way, the NMRA website has a list of every conformance warrant ever issued on everything. And that's from...
Do you have to be a member to get that information, or is it out there?
Anybody can find that. And you can look on there and see every car, every piece of track, every locomotive, every command station, every decoder, anything that it applies to.
What other electrical standards does the NMRA kind of set? Like John from Mystic Southern Railway is asking about dead rail technology. I do know there is an LCC working group, but like things like DCS, TMCC, like where, how many different control protocols is the NMRA involved in?
Well,
and is dead rail one of them, I guess.
But within dead rail, and that's a really good question. If you recently read Publisher's Musing by Joe Fugate at Model Railroad Hobbyist, he was talking about that very subject. And dead rail, or power on board, is an exciting technology. And what NMRA covers in that is the DCC transmission from the command station, either through the rails or over the air, to the locomotive. We don't, the Bluetooth technology and those things are already defined. We don't get into that. We don't get into, what battery you must have or how that should connect or any of those things. But strictly the data protocol to transmit from the central unit to the locomotive, that's whether that be over the airwaves or through the rails.
So even things like Digitrax's LocoNet and NCE's CAN bus and ExpressNet and all those, that's outside of the
Right.
NMRA's sort of standards.
Right, because that really doesn't have much to do with interchange until you get into those areas of, I want to buy a command station from this company and I want to use a throttle by that company. And a few of the manufacturers are actually doing some things. Train control systems is an example, and I just did a review on their Wi-Fi throttle, which will work on LCC, and it does work over using either JMRI or some of the other methods to use that radio frequency throttle on the TS train control systems.
I chose DigiKeys because
anybody else's, and you know, I happen to have an NCE system here.
Oh,
I've had a Digitrack system too.
oh, I don't use them either, but it's good.
Yeah, and they're both good. And
I'm just joking.
And we use the train control system throttle with this, and you can use it on anybody's. You just set up JMRI and broadcast Wi-Fi and share it, and you can do that. Iowa Scaled Engineering has a proto throttle, and they make an adapter that will plug into Digitrax or NCE, and you can use the proto throttle on either of those.
And I personally, I went with DigiKeys because I didn't want to be locked into any one protocol. And I liked that at the command station side, they've adopted multiple protocols. So as opposed to relying on TCS to make a Wi-Fi throttle, I can just hook up, any throttle. So I think it's interesting how different manufacturers have and are approaching it differently. And Dan's asking kind of with are manufacturers trying to incorporate LCC functionality or expand it within DCC, or is LCC going to be a whole separate protocol and conversation?
Well, I happen to know that Train Control Systems is incorporating LCC with DCC, and that on their command station that is present. So they're doing a lot of work on a lot of new products. 2 new throttles that have just come out, a new command station that's coming out. So they're John Forsythe's doing quite a bit on that.
So what's the future of train control? I was going to say what's the future of DCC, but I guess I know you're the head of the DCC working group, but is DCC the future? Is LCC the future? Or is the NMRA seeing what that future is, or are they leading or following? I guess is kind of.
Well, I feel that we're leading. I think DCC has a lot of capacity for expansion into the future for train control. How LCC came about and why it came about is on larger club railroads where we were running a lot of locomotives, and then through either ExpressNet or LocoNet, we were trying to run detectors and signaling and turnout control, and there was a noticeable slowdown at the frequencies or the bandwidth that DCC has. And that's why those two sort of split into two directions. LCC is, to me, more suited to such things as switch and route control, signaling, detection, communication system. It competes a lot with the Bruce Chubb computer model railroad interface, except the Bruce Chubb system is designed by Bruce. There are some other manufacturers, such as Model Railroad Control Systems in California, Seth Newman, that make products that fit into that. And you can use JMRI Panel Pro to control CMRI, or you can write your own software, which some of us do. But LCC is not so much for the locomotive control as it is for the control of all the other things around the model railroad. DCC is more for the locomotive control, could be used for some of the other things if you don't overload it.
But
The bus system
DCC is only one-way communication though, whereas LCC is two-way, is my understanding. Which
Well,
then gets into, I mean, right? There's Railcom and there's. I like the idea of knowing where my locomotive is on my railroad by having two-way communication with my locomotive. Which, if I have ESU or I have Railcom, I can kind of do that. But with DCC, I can't. But if we put LCC in, which is supposedly a two-way communication, then I could. So I'm curious, I guess, why, or maybe it is. I mean, is DCC gonna become a two-way?
Yes.
Okay.
Currently, work is underway on standard S9.3.2, which is up on the website.
Are you just
You know,
making up these numbers, or are these real numbers?
Those are real numbers. I've worked on so many standards and worked reviewing so many standards and worked with guys on these standards that they're committed to memory at this point. But yes, Railcom was also a Burns-Lyn's idea. He patented the idea. ESU has implemented it in a slightly varied form from what he came up with originally. Knowing where your equipment is on the railroad is one of the benefits to Railcom, but one of the other benefits to Railcom is you can, and there's a lot of discussion going on right now about large amount of data transfer through this protocol. And you can put a piece of equipment on the model railroad, and at the appropriate time, the decoder tells the command station, I have some information for you. And the command station, when it's ready, says, okay, let me have all your data. And all of this stuff gets shoved back upstream to the command station. Yes, in the original idea, in the original plan, DCC was a one-way communication. You changed the throttle, the command station changed the pulse that it sent out, the data that went to the decoder. You didn't know if the decoder acknowledged receiving that or not. You had no way to know. Now, in programming on a programming track, or even programming on the main now, some of the early decoders, what they would do is once the data had been received and put in the configuration variable, they sent a pulse to the motor, which created a current draw, which could be sent. And you would see a locomotive shuttle down the track in sort of a jerky pulsing motion. They're still doing that. They just put a resistor internal on the decoder board that does that now instead of the motor turning it. But
so you and I can have this conversation to some extent, and I'm barely hanging on to it. There's probably a lot of people out there who still run DC, who barely even get DCC. And like, how do I know like what manufacturer to choose, what decoders to choose? Do I need Railcom? Do I need iTrain? Can I use JMRI? Why do I need JMRI and CMRI? Why do I need a Y throttle with an LNWI with we're kind of just making up words and letters and combining. Are we coming towards some sort of way to make people's lives easier, or are we just making things more complicated? It's like
at times it might seem like it's becoming more and more complex because there are all these options out there. And the best advice that I would have is find someone near you that has implemented some of these things. And find out what they're doing, what works, what doesn't work, what they would do different. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. Are you happy with the system that you bought? What are the good points about it? What are the shortcomings? If you had it to do over again, what would you do? What about decoders? What about this? What about that? And you know, we're coming more and more to that these days, that manufacturers of locomotives, Athearn, Atlas, Scale Trains, Intermountain, Broadway Limited, you know, all of them are offering locomotives with decoders already installed and configured and ready to go to work on your railroad. And you take it out of there and you put it on the track, and the address for the locomotive is the unit number. I mean, it
Right.
couldn't be much more simpler to get things started. So if you're in the early days of DCC, and going back to the mid to late 90s, we had to take, and I still do it, I still have old DC locomotives that I've got a couple of brass locomotives over here for friends that I'm doing. And you start stripping stuff out and you put a decoder in it. Well, the great thing is now, between and some of the systems have some real basic, inexpensive command stations where you can get a throttle on the command station. You know, Digitrax has offerings, NCE has offerings. You know, all the manufacturers that sell a command station have something that will work. That's, you know, the lower end of the features and benefits. And so you can get that. And to get started, you can hook that up, and you might just simply run 2 wires from the command station to your track. Now, when you get more involved, more sophisticated, you'll want to divide the railroad into power districts, so you can have this one controlled by a certain.
See, and now you just lost people now, because right
and
now you're
this one over there.
I don't know if he's still here, but Vinny from BNSF 6951 is chasing a short on his railroad. He had, you know, basically one bus run, and just now, after like 10 years, is splitting it up into power districts to try and like organize stuff. But it is, you can really go down a rabbit hole with this, and I think it is important for people that are new to know that there are starter sets that you can just kind of hook up, and to not get drawn too much into these conversations that we're having now, because
well, and you can always, model railroaders by and large are a helpful group, and if you have guys around your area that are doing this, that are into DCC, they'll be glad to give you some advice and give you a little help. You know, they may want you to return the favor someday and come over and help build trees on their model railroad. But
yeah,
that's what that's the great thing about, to me, one of the great things about this hobby is the friendships that are developed, and guys and gals helping one another. And you know, later tonight, we're going to have a work session over here, and I've got guys coming over, and we're preparing to have an op session here on Friday, and we'll have 10 other people here besides myself running the railroad.
what do you think? You're very lucky that you're in an area where there are people with railroads and a lot of people interested in the hobbies. And we've seen over the last year, and now with the NMRA convention coming up and being virtual, and do you think, what do you think about sort of all this virtual stuff? And do you think that, you know, remote running stuff and all kinds of stuff, like, is that the way things are going to go? Do you think people will go back to being, you know, in their basement modelers and stuff?
Well, it depends on your personal preference. You know, one of the great things that you know, the pandemic that we've had for more than the last year has been very tough. It's been very difficult for a lot of people. It's caused a lot of isolation, but in that, we're in a digital age like we're doing right now, and
Yeah.
you're in Manhattan and I'm in the center of the country, and people from all around, and we're joined together and talking. And that's one of the things that we've been able to do is we have the technology that has allowed that. I'm a member of a couple of groups here locally, and we've been able to go ahead and meet where we could not meet in person, and we could share things and take phones and cameras and show people things, that projects we've been working on. So yeah, it's been a plus in allowing people to share things over longer distances. I've even talked to some people that have worked on doing merit judging for the achievement program, to take a look at models long distance through cameras and be able to just judge and score them.
Yeah. Speaking about that, you just got your MMR over this period in time. What was it, because things sort of slowed down, that you were able to get it? Because you've been in the hobby for a while. So what sort of happened over the last couple of years that made you, finally fill out all the paperwork?
Well, I've been interested in the achievement program since the late 70s, when there were fewer than 100 master model railroaders. And I lived in an area where we did not have a lot of model railroaders around. And, the NMRA was there, but the club I belonged to was not strictly an NMRA club. And a couple of friends of mine here locally where I live now, matter of fact, the former head, Paul Richardson of the Achievement Program, is 3 miles from me. He's down close to the golf course where I used to golf a lot. And he encouraged me, and his friend, Paul Myers, both are master model railroaders. And the two of them said, well, you can do this, and you should, and you've done this and this, and you just need to do a few more things. So I got interested in pursuing that, and I did. And it took, I don't know, when did I get the first certificate? The first two were engineer civil and engineer electrical, and that was probably 4 years ago or something. And then you do some scenery, and then you operate on other railroads, and you dispatch, and you run your railroad, and continually fill out paperwork and do things and follow the tenets that are there. And the national convention was here in 2018, so I volunteered and did a lot with that in coordinating the clinicians and the clinics and the scheduling. And last year, the only thing, from 2019 until July of last year, I needed to scratch build 2 more cars. And I finally got around to doing that. My wife and I went to visit her mom over 4th of July weekend, and I took a bag full of styrene and parts with me and some tools, and set up a card table in the bedroom upstairs, and to get away from all the women folk in the family.
This is being recorded, Mark. Careful what you say now. Careful what you say. Let's while we're at this pause, if people have any DCC questions that they would like to throw out there for Mark, I'll let you do that in a second. But a couple of people have commented on the thumbnail picture, and they want to know, what's your favorite L&N locomotive?
Oh, wow. That's tough. Probably the Alco C420 is one of my favorites.
Why?
Well, they're very unique in their appearance, that long, low snoot. The 251 prime mover makes a very unique sound. It's a second generation Alco. So That's been one of my favorites for a long time. But I have a lot of well, the neat thing about the L&N was that they did not confine all their purchases to EMD, GE, or Alco. They pretty well split the business. Now, Alcos were real big in Kentucky in the eastern coal fields, and that made it a favorite of mine. I just recently finished a couple of Stewart C628 and a C630, and those are pretty neat locomotives. I finished. Well, they'll be in this op session Saturday or Friday for the first time. A pair of Atlas U30Cs, and we put those on the tote train. Tote stands for Trailer on Train Express, otherwise known as TOFC by some of the other railroads. But those are all favorites of mine. Of course, L&N ran a lot of RS3s, which were great locomotives, and they ran them long hood forward.
Oh, there you go. Do you want to, for those of us like me that are not L&N experts, you want to explain what the L&N is and where they ran?
Well, the Louisville and Nashville was given a they petitioned the state in Kentucky and also in Tennessee to build a line from Louisville to Nashville. And that was just prior to the Civil War. That was in like have to look up my history chart here, but about 1856, which they completed it. After during the Civil War, they were right in the middle of some of the front lines of the fighting. And the Confederates controlled Nashville, and the Union forces controlled a good part of Kentucky, but you had raiders in there that kind of came in guerrilla warfare and disrupted a lot of things. But the L&N came out in very good financial position, although they had suffered some casualty losses to wooden trestles and bridges and equipment during the Civil War. After that, they bought a lot of railroads, expanded into the eastern Kentucky coal fields, down to Alabama, to Birmingham, ore mining and steel production there. They got all the way down to Atlanta and then all the way down to Mobile and New Orleans. They bought the Monon in 1971, and they took half of the Chicago and Eastern Illinois, and Missouri Pacific took the other half, and they ran from Chicago all the way to New Orleans. And from the furthest east was Eastern Kentucky or Atlanta, Georgia, and they got all the way to St. Louis going in the westward direction through the Henderson subdivision. So
is it's CSX now? Is that the? Yep.
Yeah, it's under CSX. The sad part about the L&N is the board of directors were asleep, and Seaboard Coastline gradually bought up the majority of the stock and had controlling ownership. So I model September of 1967. Seaboard controlled them at that point, but let them operate autonomously to an extent. But in 1967, there were motive power shortages, deferred maintenance on track. They had a few problems, but so one of my friends here says, well, you're prototypically accurate. You're having derailments just like the L&N did.
So before we get, I do want to get a little bit into your DCC, JMRI, CMRI setup on your railroad.
Mm-hmm.
But before we do that, Steve, did you have any DCC questions that you wanted to throw out there?
I kind of tell people, in the old adage, which is the best DCC system, I kind of tell them that, to me, it doesn't matter. Once you go JMRI, all right.
Put your mic closer, Steve. We can't hear you.
Sure. Is this better?
Absolutely.
All right. I tell them whether you're NEC or Digitrax, it's all it really doesn't matter once you're on JMRI. That's my opinion. But I did have one question, and it has to do with the LCC being separated out from DCC. And if I heard you correct, and I've heard other people correct, that's to slow down the delay time in the communication process. Correct?
Right.
Okay.
What LCC does is it takes some of the load off DCC, and it uses a CAN bus, which is a different bus than DCC uses. So it's a different set of wires also.
Yeah, but at what point does it really matter if the average railroader, and I don't know what size it would start to matter where that delay becomes noticeable that would require an LCC separated bus. I mean, on a smaller layout, is it really going to matter?
On a small layout, probably negligible. On club layouts, by the time you're running about 30 locomotives at once,
Totally
then you're
understand
going to
that.
start to notice it. But where the real taxing comes is when you're trying to control signals and switches and all these other things with these stationary decoders, in addition to your mobile decoders.
So we're somewhere in between a club layout
It-
and a
Yeah,
small
I mean,
layout.
I guess I guess to ask it a little bit from an engineering point of view is there a specific number of locomotives, a specific number of signals, a specific number of accessories that you can kind of say once you get to X point, you should
range.
go to LCC, or is it at this point more of just because we're model railroaders and we like to do things as complicated as possible?
Well, then again, it gets into that depends. So, it depends on the traffic density. It depends on the number of signals, the number of switches, all those things. I made the decision a long time ago to go the CMRI route before there was LCC. And my reasoning in doing it then, my first DCC system was a Digitrax, a DCS 100 command station.
Right.
And I knew early on I wanted to build a railroad that had CTC, and I wanted a reproduction cabinet with the levers and the knobs. And you couldn't do that with the LocoNet. You did a software and you had a virtual machine on your screen, and I wasn't interested in that. I bought Bruce Chubb's books. I was traveling a lot at the time, airports, airplanes, hotel rooms at night. I'm reading it. It was written well, made a lot of sense to me. I got an order.
You're an engineer.
I bought his stuff, and I bought some components, and I put components in boards, and I soldered it, and I hooked it together, and voila, it worked first thing right out of the chute.
Very good. I think Keith lost his microphone, or I lost my headphones.
Or it helps if I unmute myself.
Yeah.
There you go.
So you model the LNN. You've already said that currently you're NCE, and you use JMRI and CMRI. Can you talk us through what does what on your railroad, and I mean, I guess partially to what each thing is to some extent, because we hear CMRI, JMRI, DCC, but some people don't really know where they fit in and why you would use all three.
Okay. Well, start with the DCC system. I changed over to NCE about 3 years ago, and there were several reasons in doing that. I won't get into all of them here. That wouldn't be appropriate, but they make a good system, and I've been very happy with it. My basement is sort of a Z shape and very chopped up. So the radio reception is one of the issues, and that works really well with the NCE system. Their method of consisting works very well, and I was happy with that. So I have currently 6 power districts, and we will have more as we build. I took the approach to build the railroad in sections, get it operational, and then build the next section and get that operational and follow behind with some of the scenery. So we have.
Do you have a layout plan you could show us? I don't remember. I didn't ask that earlier.
If I can find it on my computer.
I'm sorry. I should have asked earlier. But anyway, maybe we can walk around in a little bit later. But yeah, so keep going.
So, we have 10 throttles, and everything is radio throttle. There's no plug-ins anywhere. I like the freedom of having a radio throttle to be able to move, even for a guy working the yard job. He's not having to worry about a tethered throttle and getting tangled up in it.
Radio NCE's radio or Wi-Fi like TCS proto throttle radio?
Well, primarily the NCE radio.
Okay.
Although we do have, we can get our smartphones out and run trains with that too if we want to. So we can do that. So I use JMRI Decoder Pro to configure my CVs on all my equipment, on all the decoders. And that's just so easy. Back when we started into this, before we got into JMRI, you had to figure out all the nuances of CV29, and you wanted a long address, and you had to figure out what went into CV17 and 18, how that worked together. And it just got kind of a bother to do all that. So JMRI worked really well to configure the decoders, and with programming on the main, which I was doing some of that earlier today. I take my laptop, take it in there where the command station is, plug the cord into the USB port, and tell it I want to program on the main, and I just work on whatever I want to work on, and it sends the information to that specific decoder without disrupting any of the others. Now, one of the other things that JMRI has in it that I use a lot is they have an operations program. And when I was setting up for an operating railroad, I didn't know how I wanted to do that. The popular thing here is car cards and waybills. But I didn't like the idea that my waybill ran my car 1, 2, 3, 4, and then repeated. Well, yeah, then you can go and you can pull the waybill out, put a different one in, and the car will go somewhere else. But between sessions, you have to turn those waybills, and you have to move those cards. You have to have all those boxes. So a friend of mine, which is north of here, not too far, he's on the east side of the river across from Atchison, Kansas, and he'd been using the JMR operations, and I'd been to a couple of op sessions at his place. I loved the way that it worked. So I said, I think I'll try it. And the first thing you did is as you put cars onto the railroad, I send my cars through Mont Switzer had this thing years ago called the rolling stock obstacle course, which is basically check the gauge of the wheels, the freeness of the trucks, the height of the couplers, the adjustment of the trip pins, the weight of the car. Is the brake wheel on or did it break off? Is it weathered? All those things. Then put it in the computer. I said, well, at the very least, I'll have an inventory control system. I'll have inventory of all my cars. Currently, we have about 300 cars on the railroad. So put all that in, and then we started putting in locations and sidings and industries, and then we built routes for the trains to take, and then we built trains. And quite frankly, I'm really happy with the way that works to move the freight over the railroad. And I don't do anything between an op session except print a list and check and verify that the cars are in the place where the computer thinks they are. And if they're not, I either adjust the computer or physically move the car to where it should be. And that's worked very well. And everybody has a switch list, and you don't have to worry about dropping a handful of cards and putting them back in order when they're on the floor. And I've been really happy with it. A fellow by the name of Brian Clark has an article. He's in the British region, and I looked it up today and started reading it, and he did a great job explaining how the operation software works. It's on the NMRA website. That is something that members can get to under the members only homepage section, but it's really a good article. It's actually 6 articles. It's 6 different installments, and he did a great job with it.
So do you ever use, so you use JMRI to program the decoders, but you never really use JMRI to actually drive the trains. You're using the operation system to tell your operators how to move the trains, not to do any automated running.
No, we're not doing any automated running. You could do that. It's possible, but it was just not of any interest to me to do that. So what we do is we create switch list and print them out, and we put together train packets for the operators, and he has a description about what his train does, when it's called, where it's called, what the work is. Then you got the switch list. Then you got cards, locomotive cards and caboose cards, so that you know what the decoder number and functions do. We give them bad order forms to fill out in case they run into some problems during the op session. Because if you don't report the problems, I can't fix it.
Right.
And we just make up train packets, and it runs, and that part works very well. The other piece that we're using is the Bruce Chubb Computer Model Railroad interface, and that is currently controlling signals that are operating under ABS, automatic block signals. And we also control switch motors with that. In enough time, the plan is, once we finish laying all the track, is to build a CTC machine and write the software so that the dispatcher has control of all the switches and signals.
So you won't go to a Panel Pro system. You'll always, or you want to stick with CMRI for your signaling, JMRI for your operations. You're not going to use Panel Pro and or switch to LCC, I guess, for that matter.
Right. Yeah. My plan is to stay with CMRI, and I'm writing my own software, which I've done that in my job in the past. And it's a form of, you can write it in Visual Basic, but I'm actually writing in version 7 of a professional development system of BASIC, and you can actually compile and link and make an executable piece of software with it. And for me to do a if-then statement is no big deal.
At least you didn't say you were doing it in Fortran.
Well, this is pretty close to Fortran.
I know it is.
That's what I learned on.
I know. I did. Yeah.
I was Pascal, with punch cards.
Yeah.
So my dad would bring home punch cards for us to play with as a kid. Is the NMRA, this is from Dan's Model Railroading, is the NMRA studying possible standards for software like JMRI and some of the pay software for consisting and operations?
Currently we're not, no.
Yep.
Bob Jacobson is the main guy behind JMRI.
Right.
And he's, the first exposure that I had to that was that like 89 or something like that? And it may have been before that, but he has a group. He has a group of volunteers that write the software for JMRI, and that's their hobby. That's that's the
Right.
thing that they enjoy doing, and they do a really good job of it. So, we're really lucky to have that available to us.
So speaking about things that you enjoy doing, and again, I'm leading the witness a little bit because we have had this conversation already, but I know there are a lot of things about model railroading that you like. What are the things about model railroading that you don't like? And you're about to have a working session. What are the things that you're going to have other people work on because you don't want to work on them?
Well, I can't say that there's anything in the work session that I'll have somebody do that I don't want to do. Probably the most boring thing to do is to burnish the track, and that's one of the things that we do. But I'm just happy to do that, to pick up my favorite beverage in one hand and some 2000 grit sandpaper in the other, and a stainless steel washer, and rub the rails until they gleam, and basically they stay cleaner longer. Probably the thing that I dislike doing the most is if I've got a difficult locomotive decoder installation, a locomotive that just doesn't want to behave, and we can't seem to find where the mechanical or electrical problem is. That's probably the thing that's the most difficult for me.
Yeah. How many guys are you going to have coming over for a work session, and then how many guys usually come over for an op session?
Our usual crew on Monday night work sessions is about 4 guys plus myself, and that will vary. This evening, one of the guys has some commitments at work that can't change. We have another guy that's a member of his church board that the first Monday of the month is their board meeting, and things happen, and we get some guys that come once or twice a month. And so, it's about 4 or 5 of us at a given work session. I've had as many as 10 people show up for a work session, and that becomes
Wow.
a logistic management
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
That's too many. What we do try to do is to spread people out. So some guys are working on something in this corner of the basement, and other guys are working over there. Op sessions, Friday, we'll have 10 guys here plus myself. We'll have one guy that'll be dispatcher. We'll have a yard master and an assistant yard master doing the industrial switching. And we'll have one guy that's the yard master in the staging yard, and we'll have an industrial switch job and a local turn and a couple of trailer on flat car trains, and 4 passenger trains that run, and a couple of
Cool.
express merchandise trains, and 4 coal trains that'll run. And so
Oh, that's great. I feel like a lot of people don't run passenger trains because they just sort of stop at the stations and go. But I love that you're running passenger trains.
Well, we're looking
great.
for more ways to add interest to that. We
Yeah.
have we model the Pan American number 98 and 99, and on the section of railroad that I modeled, they did not stop. They made a beeline from Cincinnati Union Terminal to the Union Station at Louisville. Those were the originating point and the first stop or last stop going northbound, and make their way south. The local will stop at all of the stations along the way to pick up and set off passengers. But we're looking for a way to add. I just finished Vic Roseman's book on Railway Express, and trying to find some ways to work in.
Well, that was fun. Welcome back, everyone. They must be trying to tell us we're over time. Let's go. I'm sorry. So you were talking about your passenger train stuff.
So we're looking for some ways to add some switching into the passenger trains. during the op session.
So I'm gonna
I don't.
go ahead, Steve.
Right. I don't know if L&N had any trains where they broke off cars to go different ways. A lot of railroads had that.
Yeah.
That would be one possibility. You could throw in pedestrian incidents and derailment.
Yeah.
Oops, I was about to click on it and it moved. Container Man 68, one of our pretty popular YouTube community members, drives a semi trailer, and he likes to go around and see different people's layouts and go to work sessions and stuff. And he wants to know if you have semi truck trailer parking outside your house that he can
Well,
come
not
visit.
quite.
Maybe enough room between driveways, right? He can.
Yeah, close by, but not right here.
So we talked a little bit about burnishing, and while I know this question is probably slightly more controversial than which DCC system should you choose, how do you clean your track?
Well, what I have settled on at this point is I'll go through the process of laying the track, painting the track, ballasting the track, then I start to prepare the track. And what I do is I'll take 1,000 grit sandpaper and 2,000 grit sandpaper and sand the rails to get any paint or anything on there. I'll get the paint off when I paint and it's still a little tacky. I'll take wood blocks with lacquer thinner and run those over the tops of the rails to get the paint off. But once we're finished with all of that, then we'll sand the rails with very fine sandpaper, which you can get at your auto parts store. It's for auto body repair. Then I'll take a stainless washer and gleam the rails. And what that does is that takes out all the fine scratches, which lets the track stay cleaner. And when I clean the track, I clean it with mineral spirits. Joe Fugit came up with that. Hey, Keith.
Hey. Oh, you're still on.
And there's Bob. Yeah, I'm still on.
Okay.
You didn't outweight us. These are a couple of my regulars here.
Awesome.
Keith Robinson and Bob Myers.
And Keith does all your decoder installs that you don't want to do?
Keith is a very good decoder installer and a lot faster than me.
We'll have to get Keith's tips and tricks.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Well, he's written a few articles for Railroad Model Craftsman and others, and he's really good at what he does. So then, for the track cleaning, the first time is we'll take a clean lint-free t-shirt and take the mineral spirits and clean the rails, and then we'll put after that, basically I only use a track cleaning, a center line track cleaning car, a pair of them behind a locomotive, and we'll soak those little towels that go around there in mineral spirits and drag them around the railroad. Nice.
And I don't think we've mentioned it yet, but your HO scale, what code track do you use?
Most of it is 83 with some code 70 on sidings. Micro engineering flex track for the most part. I do have one staging yard that is Atlas 83. The Helix is Atlas code 100. And all the switches are hand built, and we have somewhere in excess of 80 switches on the railroad.
I'm sorry, I heard you just said the word hand built, and I was just about to ask you how many were hand built, and I got distracted because Split Rock Thomas from Split Rock 323 is asking what kind of donuts you provide for the guys to get them to come over.
Well, we have at the end of the work session, there's usually a pie or other dessert upstairs, but there's a fridge down here with water, various soft drinks, and other beverages,
Yeah.
adult type beverages.
Nice. Nice. Awesome. Do you want to, I mean, I know your guides are there. If you have to go at any point, just, feel free to let me know, but would now be a good time to maybe show us some of what you're setting up for tonight for the work session?
Sure. Let me see if I can do that on my phone here.
Yeah, that same link that I sent you, you should be able
Right.
to join on your phone. If you're on an iPhone, I believe you use Safari. Containerman68 says if you're serving pie, he's on his way.
Okay, there's plenty.
Bernard C says, Mark, does barley hops count as dessert?
It does for me. Okay. Have you got my phone showing up there?
I have not seen it pop up yet.
Should show up there in a second.
Hey Z, is that your stove? Are you cooking your layout over there?
So,
People-
Mark, with all those engineering degrees, what's your alma mater?
University of Kentucky for my engineering degrees and Rockwell College.
Nothing?
All right.
It's bees.
You're cooking those, Z? Your mountains? You're cooking your mountains?
I don't see why you think I'm cooking anything. Why am I cooking anything?
The thing right in front of you there looks like an oven with dials on it. Below that. That looks like an oven to us.
These are my switches.
Oh, they're switches for your layout. Oh.
It's not a layout. It's not a stove. You guys know what a layout looks like? It's my switching family.
Too funny. Too funny. Mark, who painted those backdrops?
Well, I did that. These are this is a throat to one of our yards that we're redoing. We're getting ready to replace. Let me take you in here to the main part of the railroad.
So you use drywall as your base material?
Yeah, that part was actually drywall. And if I can get this right here. This is a photo backdrop that I shot the photo and stitched together.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about that yet. You have a website, Model Railroad Builder, and one of the things that you do are backdrops, photo backdrops.
Correct. Yeah, this is another photo backdrop that goes on for a pretty good distance. And then in here in this city, we have a backdrop of a lot of buildings. We have some false front or front only buildings. And then we have a lot of photo backdrop buildings. You can even see back there behind the grain elevator. And we have a couple of buildings here we're going to have plans to replace.
Wow. Yep.
But this is what we were working on last week. We've got a lot of ground cover that we put in. We've got a little bit of touch up to do. And we actually ballasted some track.
And your railroad's 2 levels or 3 levels?
It's currently at 2. And then we have this panel here that we put in, which covers the irrigation controls. And I've got a little bit of work to do on this part here to get some ground cover on it to get that covered. So
Mark, we just got a question. Do you have a YouTube channel?
no, I do not. Maybe I should do
Yeah, I guess the follow-up question is, when are you going to start your YouTube channel?
that. Yeah. As you can see, we modeled Kentucky. This is a tobacco field.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I went broke planning that. It was so much.
Are all the knobs on your layout, are those manual controls for your switches?
Yes, this is a manual control for the hand thrown switches. It's a design that I had of my own, which is using a spring that's out of piano wire. And then for the machine control switches, we have to have a key that goes into the lock to unlock it and get dispatcher
Ah,
for hand control. And then you throw the switches with that. That's all done in the computer.
wow. And I saw all your phones, or all your communication is old style phones.
Old style telephones. Now this area here we haven't done scenery on yet, except the basic landforms. We do have this farm supply building complex in place, which takes loads of fertilizer and chemicals. Every town has a map showing you what the track layout is and the names of the tracks and the industries and everything that's there. So, and
Bernard C wants to see your power control system when you get there.
the power control. Okay.
And you have 6 districts. Is that 6 separate boosters, or is that one booster with like circuit breakers?
That's 6 circuit breakers.
Okay.
Say hi, Keith.
Hi, Keith.
I see Keith is sitting down on the job already.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the control center to the railroad. One main power switch turns everything on. Then this turns the power on to the DCC system. We have a command station, we have a booster, then we have all these circuit breakers over here. We're currently using 6 out of the 8.
And you like those PSX breakers?
I'm going to have to turn that off. The noise is too much from that locomotive. That again?
I was asking if you like those PSX breakers.
They're great. I've been very happy with the power shield breakers. They work very well.
Nice. And it looks like your control station's kind of on one end of your layout, so your bus runs are pretty long then, is that correct?
Well, depending on how you look at it, it's on one end or it's in the center.
Oh, gotcha. Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
The longest bus runs about 150 feet.
And everyone says like a DC bus run is only 2 wires, but if we look up under your upper deck, looks like you got a couple more than 2 bus wires running.
Yes. Individual wires for the different blocks. You see, in the staging yard, we have 7 tracks, so we have to have 8 wires to handle that.
And your dispatcher will then actually turn the power on and off to those rails in the yards?
Yes, they're currently all live right now, but
Okay.
the dispatcher will be doing that. And this is the dispatcher's desk in here, and he has his control for his telephones. He has a headset to wear, and the computer over there in the corner controls all the signals, all the switches.
I like that you stick the dispatcher in the closet.
Sure.
So you're not the dispatcher. Somebody else is assigned that. What do you do during an op session?
Help people. Make notes of any problems that we ran into.
So when do you get to operate your layout?
Between sessions. Yeah.
Yeah. So you operate when you go to. I know you said I think on Wednesday night you go to one of the gentlemen that comes to your place.
Mhm.
You go to his place on Wednesdays. So you get to operate. Then
Well,
when you go to his layout.
we're in the process of building that railroad.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah. So explain it.
So what are you guys going to do tonight? As I know you said last week you did all that cardboard lacing. Is that part of the project for tonight as well?
No, we're going to touch up some scenery tonight and clean up some messes to get ready to run on Friday. Well, you and I had discussed earlier, but people listening haven't heard it. Keith just reminded me, here in this area, we have about 35 or so operational railroads.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Right. When you said in this area, I thought you meant in your basement you had 35 operational railroads. You mean in the St. Louis, Missouri area?
Yeah, Keith and I we'll have this op session here on Friday, and Sunday night, Keith and I are going to operate the Stockton and Copperopolis, which is an 1890s railroad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Are these
Fully
are
timed train order.
Are these all NMRA owned railroads, or is it a mix of different people? Or
It's a mix.
yeah, that's awesome. I'm looking to see if I have any more questions for you. Oh, I
got a quick one. The
Yeah.
NMRA National Convention's in St. Louis next year, isn't it?
Yes.
2022. So is your layout going to be on the tour, do you think?
Other end of the state.
Oh, you're in Kansas City? I heard he'd say St. Louis.
I thought you're in Kansas City.
Yeah, I'm in Kansas.
Oh, sorry.
St. Louis
Okay.
side of the state.
Okay, never mind. Long drive.
Sorry. It's all Missouri to me. I don't, what do I know?
Well, from Manhattan, it all looks the same, right?
It all looks the same from here.
Call it flyover states.
Split Rock is asking if your layout is part of an OPSIG weekend in their area.
Well, it is my plan when we have Prairie Rail here next year to be part of that.
Awesome. I don't know what I was going to ask. I just completely blanked. Split Rock saying Kansas City is about the only place with more layouts than the Twin Cities. Thomas is another NMRA master model railroader, but he's up in the Twin Cities.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many they have up there, but quite a few.
Yeah.
I think we have about, population-wise, Chicago is what, 6 times as large as we are, and we have about the same number of operating model railroads.
So, it was a little hard to see when you were walking around. How many feet? How big is your actual railroad? Like, it seemed to you like you went through multiple different rooms.
Well, the staging is in one room, the dispatcher center is in another room, and the rest of it is in one room. I am currently, where I am in here is in the crew lounge.
Okay.
Guys come here between trains, and they can look at the lantern collection. They can grab a beverage out of the refrigerator. Look at the other model railroad memorabilia that's in here. No, the railroad itself is probably a little over 1,000. So
1,000 square feet.
this is the main door that you come in, and you can see 2 levels over there on the other side.
Is this the basement?
The basement, yeah.
Okay.
It looks like a lot of your bench work too is pretty narrow. Some of it's just single track. It almost looks like 8 inches wide in some cases.
Well, the reason that I did this is we knew that this area was going to be pretty busy. And so this bench work is only about 8 inches wide. And that's really all we needed. This over here was a module that I had at another house. I moved here and it was 24 inches wide, but we actually cut it down, made it more narrow so that we can have adequate aisle space, because I've been on some model railroads that the aisle space is so tight that it's difficult to get between, bypass one another.
It's a good segue. You have a business as well. This model railroading business where you do layout design and some other stuff. Do you want to I just posted the link to your website if people want to get in touch with you, but do you want to just briefly talk about what kind of services you offer through your current company and how that got started, I guess, too, would be good.
Well, I'll do anything from I've designed model railroads for people, doing the complete construction. I've done model railroads that have gone into office buildings and other places, home model railroads. Work on locomotives, cars, build structures for people.
So basically, you work harder now than you did when you were doing your quote unquote job.
Well, my wife says I'll never quit working, so
Right.
I suppose that's true.
Awesome. Anything else you want to share with us before I let you get to your work session? I don't want to take up too much more of your time.
No, I do appreciate the invitation to be on your program this afternoon, and anybody wants to contact me, you can contact me through the NMRA or through my website, the model railroading site, modelrailroadbuilder.com, and if I get a lot of emails, it may be a day or two before I can respond, but I read them all and respond in time.
And you're doing some clinics for the upcoming NMRA convention?
Yes, I am actually, they've already been recorded. I'm doing 4 clinics, doing one on sound decoder installations, doing one on using JMRI to configure your decoders, doing one on various steps to set up for an operating model railroad, and how to use JMRI operations for car forwarding.
Awesome. And if anyone doesn't know, we're talking about the NMRA 2021 virtual convention being put on by the Santa Clara division, and they're calling it Rails by the Bay. It's $49 for about 80 hours of content. As I mentioned earlier, there is going to be a YouTube Model Railroaders breakout room, so we can, any of us that come from the model railroading community have a place to get together. But there's a lot of great people like Mark giving away a lot of very great information. So yeah, it should be a good time. So yeah, Mark,
thank you, Heath.
Absolutely. I really appreciate your time. Have a great work session tonight, and I'm going to hang out with Steve and Z, and I'll bug them a little bit now.
Great presentation, Mark.
Really appreciate it. Thank you. Bye. So Z, let's get back to this oven of yours.
Just because I'm a girl. Just because I'm a girl, you think it's a stove.
No, so now we can see its buttons, but and I think we all see that now. But it looks like you were in your kitchen because it looked like kitchen cabinets.
It is,
So we
well, I'm in my dining room area.
so we thought you had your layout on your stove.
No, I have my layout. It's I don't know, I built a base and it's on a table and it will fit back into this section here. This is like a bunch of cupboards. This is like the dining area, but all this stuff is on my island and my kitchen is there, but this is my extra dining area that we don't use.
Yeah.
So this is the rock bridge layout that I've been working on. Doing the trestles. I put them up there so you guys could see. Did you see them? Oh, I forgot I'm plugged in. Let's see.
Oh, you got your
Where
bridge
is it?
done.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
what's
that
going
bridge
on.
looks great.
Got my bridges in there.
Oh yeah, I see the one in the back too. Okay.
And vents that I've been making. So I had to do the scenery. So that's what I'm working on now, is getting the rock layout. Obviously you can tell them.
Thomas Splitrock is saying it's tour night.
Yeah. Well, I just am not going to get videos made. I'm too busy.
Yeah.
And so you guys, like, you see me all the time, but you don't know what I'm up to. So this is what I've been up to when I'm working on my railroad. So instead of a video, I just come on here and show you guys because best intentions, just never going to catch up to all the video stuff that everybody needs to,
Containerman68 is saying it's stovetop ridge. It's sweet as can be. Too funny.
And here I thought I was really impressing you guys with this nice switchboard, and all I did was make it look like I'm cooking, which I don't even cook.
It was just because you were smaller on screen. There wasn't any other.
Yeah, between the cabinets and
Yeah.
and the smallness, making those switch buttons look like stove knobs.
Yeah, this
Yep.
is the extent of my operating type layout.
Excuse me.
All right.
So I was typing and listening to Steve sneeze in his.
I tried to
headphones.
get the mic away, but I wasn't fast enough.
Splorak is saying looks like the Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner layout.
Yes, there we go.
Oh, now I see it. I didn't see it.
Absolutely.
It's because everything's white.
For now, though.
Well, the way the rock formations and stuff
That's why
are
I put
too.
this one in there, because it's all going to look like this eventually.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Well, we've given Z enough of a hard time. Steve, it's your turn. What have you been working on?
This area right down here, my the drop in above my dispatcher area. As you can see, I've been working on this side of the train platforms here, and got to wire up some nano LEDs under those awnings.
Is that the Walther's butterfly platform
No,
station?
these are the Atlas ones.
Okay. Ah, okay.
And the reason I do these is because I had two of these kits from back in the 60s or 70s that I used over here in Fairview, and I used another section here. So I bought one to finish this one out, and then I bought two more to do this side. So.
Yep.
And like I said, I gotta get the lights in them yet.
What have you done about your turntable? Is it still burnt out?
Yeah, it's still burnt out. I haven't heard back from Walters yet. I took the gears out of it so that at least I can turn it.
Oh. That's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, even if they replace it, I'm not sure I want to replace it because it's going to be a bear to get out of there because the screws come up from underneath, and there's you got the cabinets, and then it's built up, and then another base, and anyway, it'll be a nightmare to get that thing out and replace it. So I may just leave it the way it is.
Speaking about nightmares, if people haven't seen it, on Friday I launched a Ursa Light Mikado off my Z-scale layout onto the floor, and I put up a 4-minute video of that experience. So if you want a little bit of a chuckle on your way out, I guess I could post the link to that as well.
It's really
At Heath's
good.
expense.
It's right there in front of your face.
It was like
I was trying to get a little plug-in for everybody on Jenny's channel to come and see it. That would have been a great draw, but nobody caught the
I
comment.
wanted to reach out and grab it because you could see it happening. And
Yeah,
it's right
your
there.
reaction was great.
I thought it was pretty amazing that it's like I had the camera perfectly lined up for it, and then I realized as it was after it happened, I was like, wait a second, that camera was like perfectly lined up. So in the video, I'm able to actually like zoom in, and like you can see it just falling.
And as you look at it, Heath, it is where the two, the B unit and the Mikado, it wasn't the front of the Mikado coming off. It was where those two connected. Yeah.
Yeah,
it was really cool.
So I just posted my I'm calling it my train flying video. So I would appreciate
everybody
it.
should have one.
I would appreciate it if people could check that out on their way over to Tom's channel at 8 o'clock. But while we have a second, I do just want to. I know I played it earlier, but I do really want to just say another thank you to all the people supporting the channel and the channel sponsors. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for all the supporters. Steve or Z, I know Z, you said you don't have a lot of time to do videos, but you got anything coming up, or where can we find you next?
Yeah, I don't know.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Good answer. Steve, anything next for you that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'll be putting up a video on, I finished the JMRI Decoder Pro series, and JMRI has a sound module as well for changing out sounds on your locomotives, but I use the Digitrax version, so I will be, I have a tip of the day on Sound Pro coming out this week. So.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to head out of here, give people a little bit of time to watch my flying train video, and then get over to Tom's by 8 o'clock. But I do appreciate everyone being here on Monday. And next week I believe it's Bill Decker, who's going to actually show us his layout as well. He's another person I met through the NMRA, so we're going to get to see another fun layout. He's going to talk a little bit about building that layout. But until then, everybody have a fantastic, I just realized it's Monday, not Friday, so everyone have a fantastic week, and I'll see you all a little bit later over at Tom's.
And it's dark outside.
It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity.